Zeneca.
Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and my guest today is Robert McDowall. We are in conversation to look at the Channel Island government accounting procedures, the concept of Freeports, and the European attitude to AstraZeneca, and the possibility of vaccine passports. So, Robert, good to see you.
And you, Tony. I think we're hopefully getting back to what passes for normality. And
yeah, we keep our fingers crossed. Let's start with the accounting standards in the yes. Channel Islands government. And can I come out with this quote? And that is, accounts that don't show reality lead to bad decisions on allocating assets and to taking risks on a wrong basis. Accounts that cannot be understood are useless. Your comments, sir?
I agree without dissension.
Yeah. We won't mention the source.
No, quite.
but it is true, isn't it, from that point of view?
It is, and I mean, I think, Tony, accounting standards are not going to win you votes. No. They're not going to lose you votes either. But they get highlighted if and when bad decisions are made. And I think it's a critical issue at the moment because the States of Guernsey is developing its Revive and Thrive strategy. It has also expended a lot of funds in managing financial stability during the COVID crisis. And the results and performance of these are going to be closely watched.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the reform has been rattling around for a long time, 10 years plus. Presumably when you were a States member, it was brought up a few times.
It was. I mean, the States of Guernsey brought in a motion to move to international financial accounting standards in 2012, 2013, just when I came on the States. And obviously, I think it was a good thing. And we did indeed have some, Gavin St. Pierre and I had some discussions. He was the Treasury Minister at the time about this and, and what Alderney might need to do. And we did, with the assistance of Stephen Taylor, who was the financial advisor of the States here, we did do some work in terms of asset valuation of the States' assets and also looking to move to what I call a pro forma set of profit, loss and balance sheet as sort of transition. But it all faded away when I sat down because I don't think it's an enrapturing or innovating topic.
No, it is a bit dry, isn't it? But we shall battle on. Now, I think you're in favour of what is known as accruals accounting.
Correct.
Which I don't think they operate at the present time. Could you basically explain how that works, Robert?
Yes. First of all, let me explain what happens at the moment. All accounting is done on a cash basis. So both the accounts of Guernsey and the accounts of Alderney show the money that's come in and how it's expended during the year. In Alderney, we show it under the three main committees, the Policy and Finance, BDCC, and General Services. And they do a pretty well an equivalent job in Guernsey. So that only shows the cash in and out. It doesn't show how that has been allocated in terms of whether this is for existing projects, for future projects. So there is no sense of the timing of the funds and how that reflects in accounting terms. It's really glorified sweet shop accounting.
Mm. So accruals works on the basis that it makes certain assumptions, yeah?
Yeah, it makes certain assumptions. So you may, for example, be spending out, I don't know, let's take the crane at the moment, 850,000 on a crane. Okay, that's the cash system, but you need to amortize that. In other words, how much usage are you getting those funds every year. So do you assume the life of the crane to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and how you charge that amount over that period? So, for example, the previous crane, which I think was purchased in 2013.
It's about 7 years old, that crane.
7 years old. So that lasted 7 years. Should you? I mean, so basically, do you spread the cost of that over 5 years or over 10 years? And that's actually important. It's more important when you're doing extensive building. So, for example, the Connaught. For example, you're adding this, you're adding the extension, and so on. That's capital expenditure. That's mainly money up front. And over what period do you allocate the costs of that? There's not that element of sophistication is lacking from the accounts. And of course, it gets even more important where you get things like the port in Guernsey, or perhaps one or two of the other trading companies they have there, where there are substantial millions going in. So they're not running. One area where they are running things correctly is the water board. The water board actually does adopt proper accounting standards, whether they're international accounting standards, I'm not sure, but they do. Whether that came about by chance or by design, I'm not sure.
How can you actually then have a department within the States of Alderney that is doing it properly, whereas the rest of it, isn't being assessed in a correct way? That seems a bit daft.
Well, yeah, yes, it's a question. It's a question I asked, and let's say it's buried in the coincidences of history.
Right.
I don't think it was designed when they started the improvement in the water here back in 2006 and 2007 or whatever. They actually set these things up broadly correctly, and it evolved from there. But it's not elsewhere. So, for example, the transferred services. The transferred services show the cash that used to come in, the 1.7, 1.8 million, but they never showed the cost of the other services, the health, the legal service, and so on. These are embedded in the Guernsey accounts, and I sort of managed to tell them out, but they weren't mirrored in the Alderney account. So there is a lot to. Those are just some examples of the current weaknesses.
Now, in terms of the fact that the auditors have to sign this off, they sign it off with heavy qualifications, don't they? So I just wonder what the value of the accounts actually are at the present time.
Yes, many people would answer. Basically, all the auditors are doing is saying, yes, the cash came into the bank. We verified this amount, it was supported, and yes, the monies went out, and we've evidenced the support for it, whether those are minutes, invoices, whatever. It's really nothing more than that. And it certainly doesn't. They certainly don't make any comment on the future liabilities, for example, of the states.
But looking at it from comparing it with business, yes, a PLC would never get away with this, would they?
No, they wouldn't. Its shareholders would not not stand for it. You might say that the shareholders of Guernsey or all the other voters, but they stood for it. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And as I say, it's not a stimulating issue for political discussion.
But the fact of the matter is that in the UK, local government has to accept proper accounting standards. Jersey, I note, are looking at international accounting standards, and the Isle of Man FRS 102, which rings a bell with both of us, doesn't it? Because that was the only bit of the Ordinary accounts that complied to that particular issue.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the pension fund. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's right. So, yeah, Guernsey aspires to it, but it has done nothing. It's interesting to look back when they passed this motion to move to international accounting standards. They did notionally allocate 1.3 million towards the updating. I assume that would mainly be the technology to support the accounts, and presumably some degree of training of the relevant people. But that was back in, say, 2012, 2013. And I do wonder, there's a big upgrade of technology going on in Guernsey over, I think it's a 10-year period. And I do wonder if the accounting is a component of that.
Yeah. Now, a proper set of accounts shows assets and liabilities.
Yep.
But as far as a lot of the stuff that would go in as assets, how can you value them on the basis that they probably were incapable of being sold?
Well, you can't. I think what you'd have to do is, to the extent they're insured, you'd have to look at what the replacement value might be. So, I mean, in Ordinary, we did some preparatory work on valuing the state's assets, using some technology and applications which Guernsey applies, because Guernsey has some kind of offline mechanism for valuing its assets, and much of what be valued here will be really on a replacement basis. And from recollection, I think the value of the state's assets in Ordinary is something in the region of £40 million, and that covers everything from Fort Torchy upwards or downwards.
Yeah.
To the port and so on.
But looking at Guernsey, Robert, obviously, the Alderney breakwater is an asset, but on the other hand, it's one tremendous liability, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. So you might. I think there's two ways to approach it. You might look at what the it's a liability, because it'd be it's not insurable, and I'm sure it's not insured, and you'd have to. That's a liability because you'd have to look at the replacement cost of that. So that is a liability, and you may also say that some of Guernsey's assets. Let me think of something like the current port and so on. I mean, that land may have some intrinsic value. In other words, if you shut down the port, some developer might do. But these are very, very difficult things to value, and you can only come up with some sort of assumptions, and I think some of those will be open to question, as you're rightly saying, Tony.
I mean, the only way you find out whether or not anything is of value is if you privatise it.
Exactly. In other words, what is an outside enterprise willing to pay for those sets of assets? The land, the premises, the property, and so on. Exactly.
Yeah. The other thing, of course, that is the constant elephant in the room with both the states of Guernsey and the states of Alderney is the deficit on the staff pension schemes.
That's absolutely right, and certainly they're probably the biggest known liabilities for each state. In Guernsey, it's something like 700 million. And here, well, I don't know what it is now. It used to be about 2.5 million, but I suggest it will have grown, if only because of the interest rates have come down further. But yeah, they're heavy liabilities, and they will come home to roost at some point.
Yeah, I mean, how would a PLC express them in their accounts?
They would actually show it as it could be showed as a deferred liability. It could be they could take a direct hit to the P&L, if you like, for some of that. But that's really a subjective. If they had a very good year, for example, they might take a hit on it. But those are very difficult issues which tend to get separated out from the operating concern. But they are a liability. They are a liability, and they also tend to get buried away in some lengthy note on page 10 of the notes to the accounts. Not when people have picked those up for investment analysts normally.
Guernsey's got a diminishing social security fund.
Correct.
So once again, that sort of is an asset stroke liability, isn't it?
Well, that's right, because I think they do need to actually state, I think, in the accounts that on the basis of current projections that the fund would run out by, is it 2038, 39, something like that. And observe that there is no current replacement for that. But once the fund runs out, if there were no replacement, basically you'd be taking it out of the current revenues, tax revenues, as indeed they do in the UK.
Everything is pay as you go, isn't it, really?
That's right. So that's what it would revert to. But that's certainly an impending liability.
But if you take the UK, pay as you go is all about effectively raising money through the gilt market to get the cash in. If you've got a situation where government is operating an accounting system that is not accepted in general terms, how can you actually think in the future in terms of actually trying to borrow money to run it? I mean, I think the days of trying to balance the budget here are over, probably.
I think they are, and so you have to clearly show what your assets and liabilities are. And I think that if they did show the assets and liabilities clearly, there would be the opportunity, for example, if they wanted to develop the port in Guernsey, to do that through a bond secured over the assets of the port.
Yes.
In other words, equally, if they decided to do a separate fundraising on Aurigny, a similar thing. So you do need clear assets and liabilities to raise the funds. In fact, I think they were very fortunate back in was it 2014 when they raised the 330 million, was it, on the 30-year Guernsey bond? I mean, theoretically, on that one, if Guernsey defaulted, the UK would step in and stand behind it. Whether that would happen in future, I'm not sure, but I think they were fortunate with that bond.
So that was part of the deal, was it? It was underwritten by the UK.
It's underwritten by the UK if they default it. And obviously it's small beer in the UK context. I mean, it's got a very generous coupon behind it these days, 3.25%, which has had some impact on the yield, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. But looking at it from the point of view of future borrowing, they haven't really got a credit rating, have they, at the moment?
Guernsey did have a credit rating for the bond, which was I think it was A minus, something like that. I think that was more a general rating of the stability and so on of the jurisdiction, rather than a detailed evaluation of the assets. But no, I think it is going to be important in the future if they want to raise money by bond to actually they need proper accounts. They need to show the assets and liabilities so that proper analysis can be done to establish a credit rating.
Do you think they should disclose the salary bands?
Well, they do actually already. There is a disclosure of those from I think it's 100,000 up to the top level. There's about 90 to 100 people earning over 100,000. I think the highest is about 250 to 260,000 pounds.
Yeah. Okay. Happy days. Happy days.
Happy days.
Let's go on to Freeports now, because
yes.
The UK have come out with some ideas recently about it. Could you explain the concept behind Freeports?
Yes, the concept of Freeport is it's a designated area where goods can be held, stored without and shipped on without going through the paperwork of paying any import duties and any other local taxes, as long as they stay in that particular area, and that can be particularly useful for enterprises which are bringing components, other parts together to be assembled. It's also been used in Switzerland to store, let's say, artworks and assets of high value. And there's some debate as to whether it should be used for that purpose. So that's what they're for. And I think Boris Johnson, or the government, has designated 13 Freeports in the UK, and they should attract obviously employment, maybe additional support services and so on. Someone did ask me, couldn't one or more of the Channel Islands be a free port for the UK? Theoretically, they could, but of course, organisations like HMRC will want oversight of those ports, and I don't know how palatable that might be to the local jurisdiction contemplating that.
I was under the impression that a free port had to be surrounded with barbed wire, etc., etc. But I see that the Solent Freeport is going to incorporate Southampton, the northeast corner of the Isle of Wight, and also Portsmouth. So there isn't too much of a restriction in terms of keeping people out of the place, as it were.
No, it's a designated, I suppose it's a postcode kind of thing, Tony, where and so any paperwork and so on which is seeking Freeport exemption, and so would clearly have to contain that postcode to qualify. Yeah. So it's not surrounded by barbed wire. It's basically a postcode designation.
Okay, got you on that one. And you mentioned Switzerland just now as being an example of a free port. Are there any others within Europe that we should know about? Would you say Dublin?
Yeah, Dublin's got a free port. Rotterdam has a free port. I think Hamburg's got a free port. Yeah. So most of the big sort of shipping centres have some sort of free port designation, and the scope and terms obviously vary from port to port. There's not a sort of blanket, but they do encourage trade growth and support services. So I think they're a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. So we watch this space on that. Yep. Can we come up finally with this question of the AstraZeneca vaccine? Yes. Is it a fact, or is it a little bit of jealousy, do you think, that's making all of these European governments put it on defer. I mean, by the time this goes out on Friday, the situation might have clarified in any case.
Well, I think the case for it being a higher risk vaccine than others seems to be diminishing, if only because the European Medical Agency, how should I put it, is supporting AstraZeneca, as is the WHO. Put politely, some jurisdictions are being overcautious. Yes, I think there must be some underlying irritation, if you like, about the AstraZeneca vaccine. And yes, I hope by the time this goes out, it'll be
resolved.
It'll be resolved. But I think it does bring me on to one other thing, which is two other things. One is obviously concern about there may be growing resistance to having vaccinations.
Yeah.
And so for France historically has had great resistance to the normal vaccinations. And if you take a blended average over the sort of standard preventive vaccinations you have as children when you're growing up, or the flu vaccination, only about 66% of the French population take up this. So there's a high resistance to vaccination there, and the sad thing is that this may grow in these times where there's a lot of alarming and fake news around.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we're all going to want some evidence that we've had the vaccination as we travel, whether it may be in the UK, it may be Europe, or further afield. And I expect those vaccination certificates, whether they're a download on an app, whether they're a doctor's certificate, or whatever form they may take, will presumably have to state the vaccination type that you've had. And I would hope that there is no discrimination in other jurisdictions against the AstraZeneca vaccination. But so I hope this is a storm in a teacup.
Yeah, sure. Did you say that you saw somewhere that British Airways were working on the basis they'd give the country that they were flying to advance notice?
I did. So if you book your ticket with British Airways, you can forward a copy of your vaccination certificate, and they will forward that to the place of destination to ensure that there's no difficulties on arrival. And I suspect that's a sort of model that quite a lot of the airlines will adapt. And I mean, I think in the UK anyway, they're looking for people to be able to download on their mobile or whatever a electronic evidence that they've had the vaccination. But I suspect we will have something similar to that in due course. But I do think there is a temporary need for what I call a doctor's certificate or similar.
Yeah, some sort of documentation.
Yeah, because again, I get the sense even in Europe they're not going to act on a unified basis in their reaction to this. So I think we could be in for some short-term complications.
So we close with an air of optimism.
Well, with an air of optimism, I mean, July the 1st, I beg your pardon, is what I call F Day or Freedom Day.
Yeah. Well, watch this space.
Watch this space, but let's hope that's the case, Tony. But anyway, it's good we've opened up here and opening up in Guernsey, and let's hope that can be extended by the 1st of July, Tony.
Thanks, Robert. Really good to talk to you.
And you as well, Tony. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.